The cage was making sounds it should not make. Metal bending, bolt popping. The emergency transport ship had barely docked at Veterinary Station Horizon 7 when the pilot ran out screaming about the cargo hold. Doctor Prilla-san had worked at this station for 40 cycles. She had treated sick creatures from 100 different worlds. But when she read the transport manifest, her 4 blue hands went cold. Shadow Maw. 1 adult. Injured. Confiscated from illegal traders. Her junior partner, Dr. Backrellen, looked over her shoulder and made a sound of pure fear. Every species in the galaxy knew about Shadow Maws. They came from Varek 9, a death world where everything killed everything else. Shadow Maws sat at the top of that nightmare. 6 legs, black scales that ate light, eyes that glowed in the dark, claws that could cut through ship armor. The galactic danger rating for Shadow Maws was Class 7. The highest rating before extinction recommended. "We need security," Bach said. His voice was shaking. "We need weapons. We need to seal the docking bay and call for military support." Prilla was already walking toward the transport ship. She was scared too, but she was also a doctor. Something was hurt in there. Her training would not let her ignore that. The docking bay was cold and badly lit. The transport ship sat with its cargo door hanging open. From inside came the sound of heavy breathing and something scraping against metal. Prilla activated her scanner from safe distance. The readings made her heart sink. The creature was wounded badly. Infection spreading. It had maybe 6 hours without treatment. "It is dying," she said quietly. "Good," Bach whispered. Then he looked ashamed of himself. They heard footsteps behind them. Prilla turned to see a human woman walking into the bay. She was carrying a box of medical supplies. Her name tag said Annie Marsh, logistics coordinator. "I heard we got something interesting," Annie said. She set down her box. Transport pilot looked like he saw a ghost. "What did we get?" "You need to leave," Prilla said firmly. "This is a Class 7 predator situation. We are evacuating this section." Annie did not leave. Instead, she walked closer to the transport ship. Prilla wanted to grab her and drag her away, but humans made her nervous. They came from a death world too. Earth, a planet where the dominant species had decided to share their home with wolves and big cats and bears instead of killing them all. Humans were strange. "Is that a Shadow Maw?" Annie asked. She did not sound scared. She sounded curious. "I read about them once. Traders love catching them because rich collectors pay fortunes for exotic predators. This one was confiscated," Prilla explained. "The traders did not care for it properly. It is injured and the cage is damaged. We need to wait for security to bring sedation weapons." A loud crash came from inside the ship. Then a sound like tearing metal, then silence. The 3 of them stood frozen. Prilla could hear her own hearts beating that a shape moved in the darkness of the cargo hold. It was huge, bigger than Prilla had expected. The Shadow Maw crawled out of its broken cage and limped down the cargo ramp. Its black scales seemed to drink in the light. Its 6 legs moved unevenly because one of them was badly wounded. And its eyes, those horrible glowing eyes, looked right at them. Bach screamed and fell backward. Prilla raised her hands as if that could protect her. She backed away step by step. Every instinct in her body told her to run. The Shadow Maw opened its mouth and showed rows of teeth that could bite through bone like paper. But Annie did not move. "Don't run," she said quietly. "Running triggers chase instinct. It is going to kill us," Bach whispered from the floor. "No," Annie said. She was watching the creature carefully. "Look at it. Really look." Prilla forced herself to look. The Shadow Maw was not charging at them. It was pressed low to the ground. Its glowing eyes kept looking away from them and then back. Its whole massive body was trembling. "I do not understand," Prilla said. "It's scared," Annie said simply. "That's not a predator about to attack. That's an animal that expects to die. It was caught by traders, thrown in a cage, hurt, starved, and now it's in a strange place surrounded by strange creatures. It's terrified." "Terrified?" Bach made a sound like a laugh and a sob mixed together. "That thing has killed entire hunting parties. So have wolves," Annie said. "So have tigers. But a scared wolf and a hunting wolf look completely different. This one is not hunting." She took a step forward. "Human, stop," Prilla said urgently. Annie took another step. The shadow maw made a low sound. Not a growl. Something weaker. Almost like a whimper. I know. Annie said softly. I know you're scared. Everything hurts and nothing makes sense. But I'm not going to hurt you. Prilla watched in disbelief as the most dangerous creature she had ever seen seemed to shrink away from this small human woman who was walking toward it like it was a lost pet. You are insane, Box said. Probably. Annie agreed without looking back. But that animal needs help. Are you two going to help me save it? Or am I doing this alone? Nobody moved for a long time. The shadow moss stayed pressed against the floor. Annie stayed, standing 5 meters away from it. And the two Villani doctors stayed near the door, too scared to run and too confused to help. Prilla found her voice first. What are you doing? Waiting, Annie said. She had not moved since her last step forward. When you approach a frightened animal, you don't rush. You let them get used to you being there. Get used to you. Fox sounded like he might pass out. It is deciding whether to eat you now or later. No, Annie said calmly. It's deciding whether I'm a threat. Big difference. She slowly lowered herself to sit on the cold floor. The shadow moth flinched at the movement, but did not attack. Its glowing eyes watched her carefully. On Earth, Annie continued, speaking softly, I used to work with animals that people called monsters. Wolves that had been trapped and tortured. Mountain lions that had been shot and left to die. Bears that had been kept in tiny cages for entertainment. They all looked like this when I first met them. Pressed low, shaking, waiting for more pain. Prilla listened despite her fear. She had heard that humans had a strange relationship with predators, but she had never understood it. Your people keep predators? She asked. We live with them, Annie said. We share our world with creatures that could kill us. Wolves, bears, sharks, crocodiles. We learned a long time ago that killing everything dangerous just breaks the world. So we learned to understand them instead. The shadow maw made that low sound again. Prilla's translator could not identify it. That sound, Annie said. On Earth, cats make sounds like that when they're in pain, but too tired to fight anymore. It's giving up. It thinks it's going to die, and it's accepted that. For the first time, Prilla felt something other than fear. She felt pity. The infection, she said. My scanner showed it spreading fast. If I do not treat it soon, I know, Annie said. That's why I need you two to help me. Help you do what exactly? Bach asked. Save it. Bach made a choking sound. You want us to get close to that thing? To touch it? It will tear us apart. Maybe, Annie admitted. There's always risk with scared animals. But look at it, doctor. Really look. Prilla forced herself to study the creature again. Past the teeth and claws and glowing eyes, she saw what Annie saw. She saw the way it favored its wounded leg. She saw the patches of scales that were discolored with infection. She saw how thin it was under all that armor. The traders had starved it. It is suffering, Prilla said quietly. Yes, Annie said. And I'm not going to let it die alone and scared in a place that smells like strangers. Not if I can help it. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Prilla's scanner identified it as protein. Some kind of cooked meat from the station's cafeteria. What are you doing? Bach asked, offering food. Annie unwrapped the meat slowly, making sure the shadow maw could see what she was doing. Scared animals don't eat. If it takes food from me, that's the first step toward trust. She placed the meat on the floor in front of her and then moved back slightly. The shadow maw's nostrils flared. Its eyes fixed on the food. For a long moment, it did not move. Then, slowly, painfully, it crawled forward. It sniffed the meat. It looked at Annie. It looked at the meat again. Then it ate. Good, Annie whispered. Good. That's good. Prilla watched in amazement as the most dangerous creature in the galaxy ate food from a human's hand like a starving stray. I do not understand, she admitted. Any other species would have run. Would have called for weapons. Why do you do this? Annie smiled sadly. Because someone did it for me once. When I was young and scared and thought the world was nothing but pain. Someone sat with me and waited and showed me that not everyone wanted to hurt me. I owe it to that person to do the same for others, even if those others have 6 legs and too many teeth. The shadow maw finished eating. It looked at Annie with something that was not quite aggression and not quite trust. Something in between. I'm going to call you Dusty, Annie said to it, because your scales look like black dust in this light. Is that okay with you? The creature made no response, but did not attack either. Dr. Prilla, Annie said without taking her eyes off Dusty, I need you to prepare whatever you need to treat that infection. Clean wound, antibiotics, whatever works on this species. Can you do that? Prilla's hands were shaking. Every part of her training said this was insane. But another part of her, the part that had become a doctor to help creatures in pain, wanted to try. I can prepare the supplies, she said slowly. But getting close enough to use them, leave that part to me, Annie said. Just be ready. The shadow maw suddenly made a different sound. Weaker. Its eyes dimmed slightly. We're running out of time, Annie said. The infection is spreading. I can see it in how it's moving. If we don't act in the next few hours, none of this will matter. She looked back at the two doctors. So what do you say? Will you help me save Dusty? 2 hours passed like 2 years. Annie had not moved from her spot on the floor. Her legs were numb. Her back ached. But she stayed perfectly still because every time she shifted, Dusty tensed up. Trust was not given. Trust was earned. 1 minute at a time. Doctor Prilla had brought medical supplies to the edge of the docking bay. Antibiotics designed for large predators. Une cleaning solution. Bandages made from synthetic materials that could stretch over any body shape. She had everything ready. The problem was getting close enough to use it. How much longer? Bach asked nervously. He was watching from even further back, near the door. As long as it takes, Annie said quietly. You can't rush this. Dusty had moved closer over the past 2 hours. Not much, maybe 2 meters, but that was progress. The creature was still pressed low to the ground, still watching Annie with those glowing eyes, but the shaking had stopped. That was good. Tell me about your world, Prilla said suddenly. She had moved closer to, was still far from the shadow maw. About how your people learned to live with predators. Annie smiled slightly. It took us a long time. Thousands of years. We started by fearing them, like everyone does. We killed wolves almost to extinction because we were scared of them. Then we realized something. What? The places where we killed, all the predators started dying. The deer ate everything because nothing hunted them. The rivers changed because no animals were scared to stand in one place too long. The whole world started to fall apart. We learned that predators aren't just killers. They're part of how everything works together. Dusty made a small sound. Annie glanced at the creature and then slowly, very slowly, extended her hand. Not reaching toward Dusty, just offering. Palm up. No threat. On Earth, she continued, wolves mourn their dead. They take care of sick pack members. They play with their cubs and teach them how to survive. They're not monsters. They're families. Families, Prilla repeated. The word seemed strange applied to something with so many teeth. Every predator I've ever worked with was someone. They had personalities, fears, likes and dislikes. One wolf I rehabilitated hated the rain but loved snow. Another one was afraid of small birds for no reason anyone could figure out. They weren't killing machines. They were just animals trying to survive. Dusty moved again, closer. Its nose was almost touching Annie's extended hand now. Annie did not move, did not breathe. Then she felt it. A cold, wet nose pressing against her palm. Just for a second. Then Dusty pulled back, but it was enough. That's it, Annie whispered. That's the first step. You're doing so well, Dusty. I know this is scary. I know everything hurts. But we're going to help you. I promise. Prilla watched with wide eyes. In 40 cycles of veterinary work, she had never seen anything like this. Shadow maws were classified as untamable, unreachable, pure instinct and violence. Yet here was one, sniffing a human's hand like a curious pet. How? Prilla asked. How do you do this? I don't do anything special, Annie said. I just wait. I show them I'm not a threat. And I remember that fear is exhausting. Eventually, even the most scared animal gets tired of being afraid all the time. They want to trust someone. They want to feel safe. You just have to give them the chance. Dusty made another sound. Different this time. Higher pitched. Its eyes dimmed again and it swayed slightly. The infection, Annie said quickly. We're out of time. Dr. Prilla, I need you to bring the supplies here. Slowly. No sudden movements. No loud sounds. Can you do that? Prilla's 4 hands trembled. Every instinct screamed at her to stay away. But she looked at the suffering creature. She looked at the human woman who had spent hours on a cold floor just to earn a moment of trust. And she made her choice. I can do it, she said. She picked up the medical kit and walked forward. 1 step, 2 steps. Dusty's head turned toward her. Its lips pulled back slightly, showing teeth. Keep going, Annie said calmly. You're okay. You're both okay. Prilla took another step, then another. She was closer to a shadow maw than any Villani had ever been without dying. Her hearts were beating so hard she thought they might burst. She knelt down next to Annie and set the medical kit on the floor. Now what? She whispered. Now we wait just a little more, Annie said. Let Dusty get used to you being here. They waited. Dusty watched them both with those glowing eyes. The creature's breathing was getting worse. The infection was spreading. They could all see it now, the way the scales around the wound had turned a sickly gray color. Then Dusty did something no one expected. IT collapsed. The massive predator fell onto its side with a heavy thud. Its eyes flickered. Its breathing became shallow. Annie moved instantly. She was at Dusty's side in a heartbeat, her hand on the creature's flank. Dusty's head turned weakly toward her. Its jaws opened. Teeth glinted in the dim light. Prilla screamed, but Dusty did not bite. Its jaws closed slowly, inches from Annie's arm, and then relaxed. It's okay, Annie said, and there were tears in her eyes. It's okay, Dusty. You're giving me permission, aren't you? You're trusting me to help. She looked at Prilla. Now, doctor, work fast. Prilla had performed surgery on hundreds of species. She had operated on creatures with 3 hearts and creatures with none. She had treated animals the size of buildings and animals smaller than her finger. But she had never operated on something that could kill her with one lazy swipe of its claws while she worked. Her hands moved anyway. Training took over. Clean the wound. Remove the dead tissue. Apply the antibiotics. Dusty flinched when the medicine touched raw flesh. Easy, Annie whispered. She kept one hand on the creature's side the whole time, her fingers moving in slow circles on the black scales. I know it hurts, but this is the good kind of pain, the kind that means you're getting better. Prilla worked faster. The infection was worse than she had thought. The traders had not just neglected Dusty. They had used cheap containment drugs that had poisoned the creature's system. The wound was just where all that poison had collected. This will take time to heal, Prilla said. Weeks, maybe months. And the creature will need constant care. We'll figure it out, Annie said to Doctor. Bach had moved closer. He stood just outside arm's reach of Dusty, still trembling, but watching with fascination. On the screens, he said quietly. The whole station is watching. Prilla looked up briefly. Through the docking bay windows, she could see faces. Dozens of them. Station workers from every species, pressed against the glass, watching the impossible scene below. Let them watch, Annie said. Maybe they'll learn something. Dusty made a sound of pain as Prilla cleaned deeper into the wound. The creature's claws extended, scraping against the floor. Annie did not pull away. She leaned closer instead. Hey, she said softly. Stay with me, Dusty. I know it's bad. I know it hurts. But you're so strong. You've survived so much already. Don't give up now. She started to hum, then to sing very quietly, a simple melody with simple words about mountains and valleys and rivers running free. Prilla did not recognize it, but Dusty seemed to respond. The creature's breathing slowed. Its claws retracted. What is that? Bach asked. A song my grandmother used to sing, Annie said. She worked with horses. Big ones. Strong ones. When they were scared or hurt, she would sing to them. She said the words didn't matter. Just the sound of a voice that meant safety. Prilla finished cleaning the wound and began applying the healing agents. Synthetic compounds that would fight the infection and help new tissue grow. She worked carefully, covering every inch of damaged flesh. The internal damage is severe, she said. The creature's system was fighting the poison for days, maybe weeks. Its organs are stressed. Even with treatment, survival is not guaranteed. Then we give it the best chance we can, Annie said. That's all anyone can do. Bach took a step closer, then another. He was shaking badly, but he knelt down beside Prilla and picked up a bandage. "What are you doing?" Prilla asked, surprised. "Helping," Bach said. His voice cracked. "I became a doctor because I wanted to help creatures in pain. I've spent my whole career being afraid of anything dangerous. Maybe it's time I stop." He began wrapping the bandage around Dusty's wounded leg. His hands were clumsy with fear, but he did not stop. Dusty watched him with those glowing eyes, but made no move to attack. They worked together for another hour. Cleaning, bandaging, injecting medicines. Annie sang her grandmother's songs and kept her hand on Dusty's side. By the time they finished, the sun simulation in the station had shifted to evening mode. Dusty was asleep. Real sleep, not the fevered unconsciousness from before. Its breathing was steady. Its eyes had stopped flickering. "Will it survive?" Annie asked. "I think so," Prilla said. She was exhausted. All four of her arms ached, but she felt something she had not felt in years. Pride. Real pride. The next few days will be critical. If the infection does not return, if the organs recover, then yes, it will survive. Annie smiled and rested her head against Dusty's side. "You hear that, big guy? You're going to be okay." The moment was broken by the sound of doors opening. Prilla looked up to see station security marching into the docking bay, followed by a tall figure in administrator's robes, Administrator Grelvoss. Men are a species, known throughout the station for following rules exactly, without exception, without mercy. What is the meaning of this? Voss demanded. Why has this creature not been contained? Why are there civilians in a Class 7 situation? "We were saving its life," Annie said. She did not move from Dusty's side. "Shadow maws are illegal to possess under Galactic Wildlife Code Section 7749, Voss said. "Confiscated specimens must be either destroyed or returned to their home world. There are no other options. Return to a death world while it's still recovering." Annie's voice was calm but cold. "That's a death sentence. Then destruction it is." Voss gestured to the security team. "Remove the civilians. Prepare for disposal." Annie stood up slowly. She positioned herself between the security team and Dusty. "No," she said simply. "Excuse me, you're not killing this animal. Not today. Not ever." Annie's eyes were hard. "You'll have to go through me first." Administrator Voss stared at Annie like she had grown a second head. In 30 years of station management, no one had ever stood between him and an order. Certainly not a human logistics coordinator defending a monster. "Miss Marsh," he said slowly, "I understand that humans have strange ideas about predators. But the law is clear. This creature cannot remain here." "Then change the law," Annie said. "Laws exist for reasons. Shadow maws have killed thousands of beings across dozens of worlds. They cannot be tamed. They cannot be trained. They are pure predatory instinct." "That's what they said about wolves," Annie replied. "And tigers. And bears. And every other predator humanity ever met. We prove them wrong every time." Voices echoed from outside the docking bay. Prilla looked toward the windows and saw more faces gathering. The whole station was watching now. This had become something bigger than one animal and one woman. "I am not interested in human history," Voss said. "I'm interested in following proper procedure. Security, remove this woman." 2 guards stepped forward. Annie did not move. Then Prilla surprised herself. "Wait," she said. She stepped up beside Annie, her forearms crossed. "Administrator, I'm the senior medical officer for this case. I have not released this patient yet." Voss turned his cold eyes on her. "Dr. San, this is not a patient. It is contraband. It is a living creature under my care," Prilla said. Her hearts were pounding, but her voice stayed steady. Medical Protocol 44B states that no patient may be removed from treatment without the attending physician's approval. I do not approve. You are playing games with regulations. I am following them exactly, as you always taught us to do." Voss's mouth pressed into a thin line. He did not like having his own methods used against him. More footsteps. Prilla turned to see Bach walking forward to stand with them. His legs were shaking badly, but his voice was clear. "I support Dr. San's decision," he said. "This creature deserves a chance to recover before any decisions are made about its future. Voss looked at the three of them with something between anger and confusion. Have you all lost your minds? More movement at the doors. A group of humans entered the docking bay. Station workers, engineers, cafeteria staff. They walked past the security guards without asking permission and formed a line beside Annie. What is this? Voss demanded that a tall human man with gray hair spoke up. We heard what happened here. We heard what Annie did. And we're not going to stand by while you kill an animal just because the paperwork is inconvenient. This is not about paperwork. This is about safety. Safety. Annie laughed, but there was no humor in it. That animal has been awake for hours. It has been in pain, scared, and surrounded by strangers. It has had every reason to attack, and it hasn't hurt anyone. Not one person. Because it's not a monster. It's just an animal that needed help. More species were entering now. Not just humans. Valani workers. Small furry creatures from the maintenance crews. Tall, thin beings from the science department. They all gathered behind Annie and Prilla and Bach. One of them, a young Valani woman, stepped forward. On my home world, she said quietly, we had creatures like this once. Great predators that lived in the mountains. My ancestors killed them all because they were afraid. Now those mountains are empty. Nothing lives there anymore. The whole ecosystem collapsed. I don't want to be part of killing another species just because we're scared of it. Voss looked at the growing crowd. His security team looked uncomfortable. They had not signed up for crowd control. This is highly irregular, Voss said. So is compassion, apparently, Annie replied. Behind her, Dusty stirred. The crowd tensed. Hands reached for weapons. But the Shadow Maw did not attack. It lifted its massive head and looked around at all the beings that had gathered to defend it. Then it made a sound. Not a growl. Not a roar. Something softer, deeper. A low vibration that Prilla could feel in her chest. What is that? Voss asked, stepping back. Annie's eyes went wide. Then she smiled, a real smile, full of wonder. It's purring, she said. Purring. On Earth, cats purr when they feel safe, when they trust the people around them. Annie knelt down beside Dusty and put her hand on its head. The creature leaned into her touch. It knows we're trying to help. It's saying thank you. The crowd watched in silence as the galaxy's deadliest predator purred like a kitten in a human woman's arms. Voss stood frozen. His rulebook had nothing to say about this. Nothing at all. Administrator, Prilla said gently, perhaps there is another way. Shadow Maws are illegal to possess privately. But what if this one becomes the first patient of an official rehabilitation program? A scientific study on predator psychology, supervised by qualified medical staff. Voss seized on the idea like a drowning man grabbing a rope. A program meant paperwork. Paperwork he could understand. That would require approval from the Galactic Wildlife Authority, he said slowly. Then we'll get approval, Annie said. I'll file every form. I'll write every report. I'll do whatever it takes. Just give Dusty a chance. The administrator looked at the Shadow Maw, at the human, at the crowd of station workers who had chosen compassion over fear. I will need this in writing, he said finally. Annie grinned. You'll have it by morning. 3 months changed everything. The sign above the new wing of Station Horizon, 7 read Predator Rehabilitation Center in 12 different languages. Below that, in smaller letters, it said Human-Assisted Animal Psychology Division. Annie stood at the entrance, checking her tablet for the day's schedule. Behind her, Dusty lay in a custom-built enclosure with no roof and no locked doors. The Shadow Maw did not need them anymore. It stayed because it wanted to, because this was home now. Ready for the interview? Dr. Prilla asked, walking up beside her. As ready as I'll ever be, Annie said. Dusty raised its massive head and made that purring sound. Annie reached over and scratched behind where she had learned its ears were hidden beneath the scales. The creature leaned into her touch, eyes half closed with contentment. I still cannot believe this is real, Prilla said. 6 months ago, I would have bet everything I own that Shadow Maws could never bond with anyone. Now look at it. Them. Annie corrected gently. Look at them. She pointed across the rehabilitation wing. 3 more Shadow Maws had been rescued from illegal trading operations after news of Dusty's case spread across the galaxy. Each one had been scared and sick when they arrived. Each one was now recovering under the care of trained handlers who had learned Annie's methods. The galaxy is talking about us, Prilla said. About you. They're calling it the human method. Some species think you're all insane. Others want to learn. Good, Annie said. That's exactly what we wanted. The interview team arrived. Cameras and recording devices from a dozen different news networks. They set up in the observation area while Annie walked out to meet them. Dusty followed, padding beside her like a dog that had been trained for years instead of months. The interviewers were clearly nervous. They kept glancing at Dusty's claws and teeth. But the creature just laid down beside Annie's chair and went to sleep. Miss Marsh, the lead interviewer, began. Your work here has challenged everything the galactic community believed about predator species. How do you respond to critics who say you're putting lives at risk? Everything in life involves risk, Annie said. The question is whether the risk is worth it. I believe understanding is always worth trying. Always. But shadow maws have killed thousands of beings over the centuries. And beings have killed millions of shadow maws, Annie replied. We hunted them almost to extinction because we were afraid of them. We never stopped to ask if there was another way. Now we're asking, what have you learned from your work here? Annie thought about the question. She looked at Dusty, peacefully asleep despite all the strangers and lights and noise. She thought about the scared, dying creature she had first met in that docking bay. I've learned that fear is easy, she said. Understanding is hard. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes risk. But it's worth it. Every predator I've ever met was just an animal trying to survive. Most of them were more scared of us than we were of them. They just needed someone to see past the teeth and claws and give them a chance. Do you think your methods can be applied to other dangerous species? I think they already are being applied. We've had visitors from dozens of worlds come and learn from us. Species that have been enemies for generations are starting to talk because they watched a human sit down next to a shadow maw and refused to be afraid. After the interview, Annie returned to Dusty's enclosure. The creature woke at her approach, tail thumping against the floor. She sat down and Dusty rested its head in her lap. Prilla joined her a few minutes later. Bach was with her. He looked different now. The constant trembling was gone. Working with predators had changed him in ways none of them had expected. New emergency call came in, Prilla said. A transport ship found something strange on a remote moon. Another predator species. The locals are terrified and talking about orbital bombardment. Do they want our help? Annie asked. They specifically requested you. Annie looked at Dusty. The shadow maw made a low sound, almost like it understood. What do you think, big guy? Annie asked. Feel like meeting some new friends? Dusty's tail thumped faster. Annie laughed and stood up. Tell them we're on our way. Bach shook his head with a smile. You know, when I started at this station, I was afraid of everything. I thought the galaxy was full of monsters waiting to eat me. Now I spend my days treating the most dangerous creatures in known space. And I've never been happier. That's because you learned the truth, Annie said. There are no monsters. Just animals that haven't been understood yet. She walked toward the docking bay, Dusty padding beside her. Prilla and Bach followed. As they passed through the station, workers stopped to wave. Some reached out to pat Dusty, who accepted the attention with patient dignity. A creature that had once been classified as too dangerous to exist now walked among hundreds of beings without fear. Not because it had changed, because it had the airlock. Annie paused and looked back at the station that had become her home. At the rehabilitation wing that had started with one scared animal and one stubborn human. Ready? Prilla asked. Always, Annie said. She stepped onto the ship with her friends beside her and the galaxy's most dangerous predator at her heels. Somewhere out there, another creature was scared and alone and waiting for someone to see past the fear. Annie was coming to help.